Should the Terps add another QB?
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, video content creator for 247 Sports and InsideMarylandSports.com, and host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys all for making us part of your day on this Wednesday. And this episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or the Google Play Store. Should the Maryland Terrapins add another quarterback? That is the question I think that I want to talk about with the transfer portal being open, and I see a bunch of different players entering and leaving their schools. And I'm going to go ahead and say this. I think the Terps should add another QB. I don't think it can hurt. Well, there are different ways it could potentially hurt, but I do think there's more benefits to it hurting. This is a weird time of year for college football. A lot of stuff is about the portal. You see a bunch of different players entering and leaving once they get in their situations, and maybe they don't like it where they are or whatever. Spring ball, there's going to be a lot of people that enter in new programs. I mean, one program that seems to have a ton of change so far in the portal is Colorado is one for sure. And I know we're not here to talk about Colorado, but it's interesting how much turnover they have had in the last week or so just on their roster. And Maryland's hasn't been as active in the portal as a place like Colorado, but I think that it might not be a bad idea to add some other positions, but specifically I'm going to talk about the quarterback room. Going into the year, I didn't have a ton of confidence in this Maryland quarterback room. I thought it was in a decent spot. I thought there was some talent, but I didn't have full confidence. I still thought that without Talia, none of these guys have really played much. MJ Morse is the most experienced, but even he's had definitely some high moments, but he's definitely had some low moments too, and he's nowhere near the perfect type of prospect. But we went in thinking he would have a good chance at being QB1. I like Cameron Edge. I just don't know if he's dynamic enough for our offense, and I don't know if he's dynamic enough to overcome some of the maybe other places that we aren't going to be as talented at, like the offensive line or with the run game. I don't know if he can get it done in the run game himself and make up for some of that, maybe some of those games where we're not going to be as talented. And then I like Billy Edwards, but I absolutely do not love Billy Edwards. I think that I watched him struggle throwing the ball in the Music City Bowl, even though he won MVP and all of that. And so I went into this offseason and I was thinking, and I was like, I do like this quarterback room. I have three guys where I kind of want to take a part of everyone's game and make it into one player. But, of course, that's not a realistic way to go about it. But I did have not the most confidence. But I have to say, I'm less confident now than I was going into this spring and going into this offseason. And this weekend, Maryland spring ball game could change my opinion on that. It could change how I view that. But for right now, I am not as confident in this quarterback room as even the low amount of confidence I had going into this spring. All the reports about how practice has gone, how practice went at Ballou High School, where Maryland did this last weekend. They had a practice. I talked a little bit about the quarterback battle yesterday. Everyone seems to be inconsistent, and there doesn't seem to be a clear leader. It seems like Billy Edwards is getting a lot of the reps the first team reps, but it's like, I don't know if I trust Billy Edwards. I think he's more of a package quarterback. I think he's a guy you throw out there for a series to mix things up or for a play, a quarterback draw, a read option. I don't think he's like your full-time starting quarterback. And then Cameron Edge is struggling with accuracy, which is not a good sign because he's supposed to be maybe the most accurate thrower in that room. And then you look at MJ Morse. He's having some of the same inconsistent issues, and apparently he struggled the first practice pretty big time at Morgan State. So I don't mean to rant about how the quarterbacks seem to be struggling, but this goes to my point that I don't hate if the Terps add another quarterback. You cannot get the quarterback position wrong if you're a team like Maryland. Some schools, they can have like pretty good quarterback play and the rest of their roster can make up for it. I think about Ohio State last year. I mean, you guys might have different opinions, but I didn't think Kyle McCord was anything special. I didn't think he did a whole lot of things. I was like, dang, like that guy is going to win you a football game. I didn't view him like that kind of quarterback. And Ohio State has had some of those guys like C.J. Stroud. We see what he has been doing in the NFL, and he was a pretty big-time player at Ohio State. But I never looked at Kyle McCord and said, he's the reason they're a top 10 team in the country. It's that surrounding pieces. But Maryland doesn't have that same talent on the roster to be like, okay, we have a quarterback that's like not really special, but he's kind of game manager, if you will. I know people have different takes on the game manager thing, but he's kind of more of a game manager, and he'll kind of just go out there and he's not going to do a whole lot of special, but the rest of the team is so good that it'll make up for it. I don't think we have that type of team this year, and that's a big reason why I think I would love to add another quarterback in the portal. And I don't know what name it would be, and I don't know what quarterbacks will end up entering. I'm sure a couple more will end up going in there after some of these quarterback situations and quarterback battles get kind of more situated. Even one of the Maryland guys could potentially enter the portal. I think that's not a crazy statement to make at all. And so I'm looking at it and I'm just saying, I don't think we're good enough right now as a roster to say that, okay, our quarterback just has to be a game manager. We need a playmaker in there. And I think MJ Morse has the potential to be a playmaker. And I think Cameron Edge has the potential to be a really high-level thrower of the football. But if they're not ready, if they're not the guy and their potential isn't showing and they're not playing well, I think you have to add somebody to this room. Will it happen? I doubt it. I doubt that Coach Loxley decides to add somebody else to the room, but I don't think it would be a bad idea at all to add somebody else. I think it could be, honestly, a pretty smart thing to do with how this roster is right now overall and where things are. I do not think it would be a bad idea to add another quarterback if we continue to see these inconsistencies pop up. But as of now, it's a three-way battle. I have no idea who's going to win it. And I think adding someone could push somebody out. If we add another quarterback and transfer, somebody could decide to leave. And I don't want to add someone that's like average and it's like, we probably really shouldn't be going after him. We're kind of pushing it a little bit. But I would like to go after someone that's a pretty big-time player, someone that has a chance to play at a pretty high level at the quarterback position. But of course, those guys aren't easy to get. It's not going to be easy for Maryland football to get. But I think if there's an opportunity, I wouldn't hate going after a guy. But I do think there are a couple of consequences that could potentially happen. Like I said, maybe somebody gets pushed out of that room. Maybe someone could leave. And then as well as I think that it just kind of hurts confidence in that room a little bit. Because if you're adding in another guy, you're basically saying you three guys haven't been good enough. And they kind of already have done that with MJ Morris when they added him into their the quarterback mix this past summer. And they were basically saying, Cameron Edge and Billy Edwards, you guys right now haven't shown that you're good enough to be the next starter in line. So I don't think it's a bad idea. I think I would rather add somebody else because you can't get this wrong. But I also think that there are a couple of consequences. So don't add somebody that's not really going to add value to the room. That's not really a guy that could potentially be a starter for Maryland football and do it at a pretty high level. But I really do doubt that they add another quarterback. But I'm just saying overall, I wouldn't mind if they do. The NFL draft is only on Thursday. It is tomorrow. I want to talk about some of the Maryland guys, and overall, I want to give my predictions of where I think guys are going to get drafted overall. I will tell you about that after this ad from FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your first place to bet on every single game. I know you guys are enjoying the playoffs. I know a lot of you guys have been watching the NBA playoffs or the NHL playoffs, whatever you're a fan of. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks. on the app that is safe, secure, and it's easy to use. What are we waiting for, guys? You guys got to get on FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet an automatic win. There's games tonight, so make sure you guys do it tonight. There's games for the NBA and NHL. Don't miss out. Don't miss out before these playoffs are over. You might regret it. FanDuel's America's #1 sports book. So the NFL draft is basically here, and I'm curious what you guys think where guys are going to get drafted in terms of the Maryland guys, but I want to give my opinion of what round I think these guys will go in, and maybe I'll say should go in. And I think we have to start at the top with our top draft pick in Beau Braid. Beau Braid's really interesting. I think he's going to be the steal of the draft. I really do. Of course, there's some Maryland bias to go along with that, just covering the team and just seeing how he operates and seeing him play every single game. But I really think Beau Braid is honestly excellent at what he does. I think he's one of the best players, one of the best safeties in the draft. And I think teams on film, someone that picks him up is going to realize that they kind of got a steal in Beau Braid. And I'm sure there's plenty of teams that have him on their radar. He's the type of guy that probably met with just about every single team because of kind of where he lies. You don't know exactly where a kid like that is going to go. But with his versatility, with some of his playmaking ability, his run-stopping ability, his ability to hit, he can also cover as well. I really think there's no reason for him to go past the 4th, 5th round, and that's at the very latest. My projected round, I think he goes in the 4th round. I'm actually kind of excited to see how these stack up to actually what happens. Obviously, I don't scout every single safety in the draft. I know it's a weak safety class, but I do think that Beau Braid will go in the 4th round. But if I was picking, I might keep him around the 4th round, obviously. I know I just hyped him up a little bit, but maybe I reach for him in the 3rd round, but I do like him in the 4th round. I don't think that's a bad spot for him at all, especially because some of the safeties might just fall, and so naturally he's going to fall as well, depending on where people have him on their board. But I think he could definitely fall just because there's not a deep safety class, and people aren't really going to go out there and reach on a safety that they don't think is a high-level player. It's just not a player that you need to be able to reach on. Let's talk about Talia a little bit. He's an interesting one. I don't know if he gets drafted. I don't know if he goes late. I don't know exactly for Talia. I do have a guess. If I was drafting him, it's tough because when I talk about Talia, he just doesn't possess those type of NFL traits that they love. He's small, doesn't have the biggest arm ever. He's not the fastest kid. He can definitely move, but he's not the fastest guy at all. But I do think there's a spot for him in the NFL as maybe a backup, as maybe just a practice squad player. He would have to prove himself, and he would definitely have to limit the turnovers a little bit. You can't go in there in the NFL and be a backup quarterback and turn over the ball as much as he did at Maryland. I know he tried to make plays a lot, and that was a big reason why he turned over the ball a ton, but you can't go in there and turn over the ball as much as he did at Maryland. But I'm looking at Talia, and I think, it's interesting. I'm going to say he gets drafted. I think he goes undrafted. That's my best guess. Maybe he slides into the 7th round, maybe even the 6th. I think that's entirely possible, but I'm going to go ahead and say he goes undrafted. I don't know what teams have him on the board, and then I know the Maryland Pro Day had some mixed reviews. There was one thing that came out that said it didn't go well and that he showed very little zip on the ball, amongst other things. So I'm looking at him and I'm saying maybe he doesn't get drafted, but I also think there's a shot where he goes 7th round. If I was a GM, I think I would pick him in the 6th round. I think he's a guy that proved it in college that he can be a good player. He's accurate. I think he's a backup. I think he could be a career backup for somebody. The only thing that concerns me is his size, but you got to take chances on some of these guys. Not your backup quarterback prospects aren't going to be perfect in any way, but I think he proved to kind of carry a Maryland team that was pretty good, but nothing special a lot of the time. And I think he proved that he could really lead a team and do some really good things, even though he never really got that huge win, that win that would have been like, yes, like Talia got that win, that signature win that I always like to talk about. But I do think I would draft him around the 6th, but maybe even the 7th round as well. Tarheeb Still is an interesting one. I have an idea of Bo Braid and Talia about their draft a little bit, but Tarheeb Still isn't a guy I've heard a ton. And I'm not sure exactly. I think he could get drafted for sure. I think he could, I'll say 7th round for now for him, but he's definitely going to be in somebody's camp. He's way too good not to be in somebody's camp. He's one of those guys that if he went undrafted, somebody would pick him up right away. But with the recent track record of Maryland players and Maryland cornerbacks, maybe somebody says that this is the guy that we want on this team. Maryland cornerbacks have been really good the last couple of years in the draft, and maybe this is a guy that we want to take when we think about Deonte Banks, how he went in the first round, and then Jacorian Bennett as well went in the 4th round. So there might be like this thing where people believe that Maryland safeties are being developed right. I'll talk about 2 more guys. I want to talk about Gottlieb Ayizde. Apparently, he tested pretty well at the combine. So an offensive lineman that tests well is a pretty big deal. They like guys that can move. They like guys that can hit spots, and that's going to make it a lot easier to draft you if you have some of those traits. Even if they don't think you're right now, might not be ready. If they think they can develop you, they have a lot of confidence in those coaching staffs in the NFL. And Gottlieb Ayizde only played 1 year at Maryland, but I do think he's a pretty good player that can play in different spots along the offensive line, which will also help him just playing left tackle, playing right tackle. Maybe he could even go inside a guard. But him playing different spots on the offensive line through his college career definitely will help him. I'll go, I think, 6th round, maybe 5th round for Gottlieb Ayizde. Maybe he slides into the 5th, but I do think he does get drafted. I don't think he goes undrafted. And then, I think I would pick him around the 5th round as well. I think if you can get some value in the offensive line in those late rounds, I think you have to be able to do it. Last player I'm going to talk about today, I'll talk about some of the other guys another day, but Delmar Glaze. Delmar Glaze he's interesting, all Big Ten type of performer, has been a really good player for Maryland for a while now at the tackle position. Has graded really well the last couple of years on PFF. I think he's a guy that gets drafted around the 5th round, to be honest. We'll see exactly. Maybe he could step up into the 4th round. I expect him to be 2nd off the board after Bo Braid in terms of Maryland players. But I don't know exactly kind of where the NFL values him, especially compared to Gottlieb Ayizde. I would guess that Delmar Glaze is in front of Gottlieb Ayizde in terms of just his NFL outlook right now, but I do like Delmar Glaze right now in terms of him going around in the 5th round. Let's talk about Maryland transfer Rodney Rice. How good do I think Rodney Rice can be? I will tell you about that after this ad from the Gametime app. Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minutes, but buying tickets is hard? Like a Maryland Terrapins game, for example. I've been there before. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, and comedy and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun you'll have. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last-minute seats and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account or redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Okay, well, I have a competitive side. We all do. My competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times, and it's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with your friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties just like classic Monopoly. But now I can also host their vaults and riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly guy is. But it's not all just competitive side that I love. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get Monopoly Go. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Rodney Rice, the Virginia Tech transfer, I think has a shot to be a really good player for the Maryland Terrapins. I think he is honestly the most underrated player that we are getting this offseason. I don't think people realize just how good Rodney Rice can be. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he just ends up being a role player for us. But I really do think that Rodney Rice can be a pretty high-level player. He was a 4-star on the transfer list, so we did have we're having like a top 6, top 5 transfer portal class, and they did rank Rodney Rice as a 4-star transfer. So I don't want to say people don't think he's going to be good. Like plenty of people think he's going to be a really good player, but I think he can be like starting type of good for the Maryland Terrapins, and I think he has a chance to do some special things for Maryland overall. I still don't really know why he left Virginia Tech and what the situation was, but in the 2022-23 season, he did play 8 games. He was injured a little bit, and he didn't play last year or this year, I guess you would call it. You guys know what I mean. He didn't play this past year, but he did play 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, he showed flashes of being a pretty special overall player. Where I remember he had a huge game against Duke where it looked like he was the best player on the floor maybe, but he averaged 20 minutes per game, shot 33% from 3, 83% from the free throw line, averaged an assist, averaged 7.4 points. And I kind of want to dig into this a little bit. There was definitely, and this wasn't like nearly as high level as he's going to play. He didn't really get the consistency and types of minutes that he wanted. In some games he'd play a lot of minutes, and some games he wouldn't play as much, but he still was able to average 7.4 points per game. And you might look at that and be like, that's not that much, but that's him as a freshman. And I'm looking at him now and just thinking he's had a year to hit the gym and just improve on everything. And I think he's going to become a really good player for the Maryland Terrapins. And I really like his game because he's versatile. Number one thing, he can shoot the ball. I like guys that can shoot the ball. And last year reminded me why I like guys that can shoot the ball after those shooting performances that I saw from the Maryland Terrapins last year. But he looked a lot better shooting. He's a really good shooter of the ball overall. He's been a good shooter since he's gone to DeMatha. Even though the percentage he shot in his 8 games was only 33%, which isn't like bad. It's not like amazing, but he's going to be a better shooter than that. I expect him to be probably around mid-30s, mid-30, maybe like 36, maybe we can get him to. His field goal percentage does have to improve, and maybe that's some of the stuff he has to work on, is being able to get to the rim, maybe just some shot creation stuff. He can definitely create his own shots and handle the ball, but he just has to work on maybe getting more separation. And he's not like an elite athlete. He's a pretty good athlete, I would say. He's not an elite athlete, so he's not going to like blow by guys, like not just going to blow by guys like Jameer Young did. He's going to have to do it more with his craft and with his dribble, but he's been able to do that his whole career, and I think he has a chance to start for us. I know a lot of people think that they like Deshaun Harris-Smith and think he's locked into the starting lineup, and I'm not saying he's not, but I do want to say that I do think there's a pretty good chance that Rodney Rice starts. I know Miguel is interesting. I think Miguel could come off the bench because that's what he's done for UFC or UCF, excuse me. So I think there is a pretty good chance he does that. But I do like Rodney Rice to start, and I think there's a pretty good chance that he does that. And I think there's also a chance he doesn't. We'll see how the rest of the roster changes and what player we add. But I do think that Rodney Rice can be a really good player for Maryland basketball overall. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.